bit about yourself, Mr. Man. Kind of what your background is. I kind of touched on it lightly, but I kind of want to know a little bit more about you, and then also kind of move on into what pushed you to want to become an educator in this space. What pushed you to the brink?
Absolutely. So for myself, I was born and raised in Toronto. And from Toronto, I had moved up to Barrie, where I spent most of my adolescent and younger adult years. And I was an EA, an educational assistant. I worked in the school board with individuals on the spectrum, autism spectrum. I've also
Oh,
worked with individuals with dual diagnosis, FAS, FAE. So I come from a people person background, people first background, essentially, where you put your life on pause and focus on their inabilities and help them in whatever shaped way you can. So it got to the point where I didn't know myself because I spent so much time helping others out, didn't know who I am, what I wanted, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, nothing.
Right.
So I had asked one of my friends who worked with me in the school board, do you have any friends out west? And out west is the oil fields. I'm sure it is in the US too, right? Texas and whatnot. So
yeah.
he had connected with one of his buddies. I connected with that same buddy a couple of days later, and literally end of the month, I was gone. I packed up everything in my car, moved out west, and I was living out there, and I became a gypsy essentially because I had a set home, but I lived nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Cleared all my debt, came back. Actually, while I was out there, cleared all my debt. And then one of my friends was suggesting, why don't you go to school? Why don't you go to school? I'm like, I'm not going to school. Like, I'm too old for that. And then it got to the point where I was like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I was 30 something years old in the oil field, turning wrenches, trying to figure my life out and what I want to do. And I went on one website and did their aptitude test to see what could be good for me. And lo and behold, they're like, you can be an educational assistant and a youth worker. And I'm like, I just left that industry. I'm not going back into that. So, so legitimately, my strategy was I just read down the list of what they have, and the biggest industry they had there was aviation. I knew nothing about aviation, so I'm like, I'm gonna do that. And I took it on head first, and I graduated with honors. I was on the dean's list every semester from something I had no idea about. But my motivation was I either do this and put my all into this, or I end up back in my old life where I had no direction in what I was going to do.
Yeah. Well, that and look at so how long were you in that position in the aviation? And
So
what did you actually do there?
So with aviation, while I was in school still, my last year of school, um, so every year we were offered a co-op, and my second co-op was working with Orange Air Ambulance here in Ontario, and that air ambulance extends into Manitoba as well. So I had an idea and understanding of what air ambulance was like at that point from a government standpoint. So when I
Okay.
saw my last co-op come up, and that was with the company that I want to say I work for now, but I don't. I retired just last week. I had worked with them for my last co-op, and then while with them, they had created this position for me, specifically for me, because they liked what I could do. They liked my Excel skills. They liked the way I conceptualize and perceive things. I'm an Excel wizard, just so you guys know. And they created this position for me. So quality assurance and technical records. Technical records is the fact that I look after all the aircraft in regards to maintenance and anything that happens to these aircraft. So if someone
Right.
changes the battery, if someone changes a fuel control unit, if someone does any type of work or anything that happens, I look
Right.
after all of that. I manage the software behind everything to keep the entire maintenance schedule that we're authorized for from our regulatory body, Transport Canada, in adherence
Uh-huh.
to the CARS framework. CARS is Canadian Aviation Regulations, and I make sure
Uh-huh.
that we adhere to that. So lateral movement from aviation regulations to monetary standpoint, complete different monsters, but regulations is regulations. If you can understand how to regulate and how to adhere to a regulatory body, because that's what I do, I understand looking at these companies who's adhering to a regulatory body at that point. It's my bread and butter. I do this all day and day.
So you understand, you have a profound knowledge, really, when you're looking at some of these documents, what they mean, or perhaps what they don't mean. Because a lot of people jump to conclusions when they see some documents. They think they might mean something different than they actually do. Um, you're kind of understanding what it means, and then not only that, maybe how long it would actually take for something to come into fruition from the time that these documents start rolling out, right? I would think, I'm speculating here, but
From the document rollout, a lot of the videos and timelines that I've seen in terms of implementation from the first phase in is usually 12 to 18 months after the fact. So tomorrow, January 8th, there is something rolling in here, the Financial Services and Market Act 2023 in the UK, and that's being implemented tomorrow. But there's still that phase in period before that.
Right. Yeah,
You
they
know,
got to
before
work.
they
They got to
finally get,
work it all in.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. It's not just a go ahead, have at it, and we'll see how it goes. We're gonna, here it is on this date. We're gonna implement it. Now we gotta take it all the wrinkles and plan it all out so it's implemented properly. So it's usually a 12 to 18 month period, or phase in, if you will.
so let me ask you this. One of the things that really resonated with me when I came across your channel, it first of all, you seem like a very down to earth, genuine person who really wants to help educate others um, in this incredible transformation that we're going through at the moment. Um, and I also realized that you were someone else that was really getting kind of going down the off the beaten path and finding some of the conferences and summits and private meeting recordings that most of the public don't ever come across. And I found that fascinating, just because number one, a lot of it is boring. When people listen to it, they can't even stand to listen to it at all, because like, oh my gosh. Uh, but it's just, to me, I don't have the knowledge that you have when I'm reading some of the documents. But I definitely am smart enough to understand how important what I'm listening to and watching. So when I found your channel, I was so excited to have somebody that actually does recognize that. I'm curious, is how you go about finding these conferences and summits. Is it, are you stumbling upon it, or are you intentionally finding them because you know these bodies exist already?
That's a good question. Just to go back to what you said before in terms of watching these boring things, a lot of them are like pretty boring and mind numbing. But then when you find that little piece of, like, that little gem, it honestly feels like a basketball game or a hockey game. So I'm sitting there like reading and listening, and then it becomes, no, he didn't just say that. He didn't just say that. That can't.
Yeah.
Everybody else is cheering with me, but nobody else understands it. And they're like,
Oh, you're like, guys,
what's wrong
no
with
one
you?
knows. Like, no one knows what I just found
Yeah.
here. You realize what I just found.
And then I show it to them, and they're like, yes, so what? I'm like, really? You don't understand?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
yeah. That's it. It's like that. It's like you don't get this. Okay, you will
yeah.
though. I have faith in you. You're gonna have this in 2 years. I promise. Continue.
So
Didn't mean to interrupt.
just to, I guess, hit back on the main question there, how do I get a lot of these videos? I started off with the regulatory bodies itself. I had to learn who they were. So I spent a lot of time learning about who they were. And I honestly attribute this to my schooling and education. I know schools and indoctrinating things, but it taught me how to study and study effectively, and always go back to the regulating bodies first. Who are the regulating bodies and how do they work? How do they operate? What's their structure? And then once I had the regulating bodies and learned a bit about who they are, I just started going down the hole. They would mention a name. Okay, who's this name? Look into them. They say another name. Okay, go over that way again. They say they adhere to this and that and this and that. I'm gonna check you out. I'm gonna hit you up there. And then it got to the point where my algorithm became just on par. And now I find things that are like, I don't know, it's a 2 years old. It's like 5 views on it that have like the biggest
Yep.
nuggets ever. And it's like, how does
Hey.
nobody not know about, how do people not know about this?
You posted something the other day, and I said, I knew you'd be following that channel that has like, hardly any views and like just nuggets and gems of information. Wow. So fun, though. So since you start to look up a name, and I do that too, particularly even if I'm looking at a news article, I find that that when they say news unlocks the map, right? It really does, because when you come across a news article, they'll talk about certain things that doesn't sound quite right, but they'll have terms in there or people's names. And so I don't necessarily read the article. I look at it for the names and the companies that they're mentioning or dates. And every time that I do that and I cut, paste, and search it in there, I find something else. My thing is that a lot of the stuff I find, I'm like, I know this is relevant, but I don't know where it fits into the overall picture, you know. And so you were saying the other day, you kind of started having like building your own timeline of based on the connections that you've come across. One thing I wanted to ask you is, are you familiar with Citizen of the Future and the XX like 1133? You know, they created the money map.
Yes.
Have you seen that? Are you familiar with those guys?
I'm very familiar with XX. He's
Oh shoot, let's go.
He's actually posted a few of the stuff that I have or posted it. And Citizen of the Future, we actually chat every now and again. I think I was in a couple groups with him as well, like
Love
just
him.
in the Twitter chat spots there. I'm appreciative to know individuals such as like yourselves and them too, because they each like you guys y'all dig deep, man, and I appreciate that.
They do. Dude, they do. They do.
I mean, you do too. That this is the thing that a lot of people may not understand the amount of time that goes into doing this. Just even researching. I'm on the end of researching it myself, right? But coming up with kind of like putting it all together in a cohesive way that makes it understandable to the masses. It's a very difficult thing to do. And kudos to all of you that spend your time and effort, giving your time and energy to the public to try and help encourage them to learn this, because while this is not happening overnight, there is still time for people to kind of come up to to speed on this. It is happening kind of quicker than we really realize. And if people could just spend some hours looking into the things that you're researching, or Citizen of the Future, or watch Vita broadcasts and any of these channels, and kind of educate yourself, you have the opportunity of a lifetime right now, in my opinion. So,
oh yeah,
I couldn't agree more with that statement.